Hey everybody, and welcome to your second critique of the second week of class. Week 2, Assignment 3, video critique. This time around, we're going to look at your distressed effect images, and the people's images we're going to be looking at on this video are Becky's, Larry's images, Betty Joe's, and Mitch's images. And since we just talked about a lot of these the other day, I'm gonna pretty much try and keep it to just the effect, how basically how well you did the effect, and then if the effect goes with the image, and just sort of if it adds anything to the image, or if it looks accurate. So yes, sounds like a good thing to talk about. So let's start with Becky's images here. Let me go ahead and pull them up. And alright, so I'll zoom out here just a little bit. And sepia tone with a wrinkled paper texture. Oh, excuse me, it's getting kind of late. I think that actually looks pretty nice. I think this is an improvement over the original version. It's a little more muted, that's for sure, and the texture is pretty subtle, but I think that it does go well. I think a lot of times this is a good kind of background to have that texture on. It's not a blank background, which I think is usually too plain, but it is. It does have continuous areas, sort of like this, without a ton of real defined image elements. I think that with those sort of things, they excuse me. Oh, I'm so full of yawns today. Anyway, what I'm saying is that's kind of the background that you want for a texture like this. And you can see, oh, okay. So yeah, I was talking about muted. You definitely, this green of this guy is muted a lot. And that sort of evens out a lot of the tones in a way that I think is pretty visually pleasing. I do still like that image, but I think that what's going on here is a little bit more subtle, and I like that a lot. And I think the texture adds a lot. Okay, so black and white with emulsion edges. Now I remember. I'm sorry, guys. Oh, I can't stop yawning. I remember liking this image a lot in the last critique, and I do still like it here too. I would say that while these edges aren't 100% faithful to what this process would look like in the darkroom, I do actually like this effect quite a bit. I would say that I think it's more effective on the right side of the image here than it is on the left side. I would say maybe there's just less of kind of this happening, this sort of almost like serpentine thing here. It's a little bit more jagged, which I feel like maybe looks more like the effect, and I also just think it's more visually pleasing. And I think this is good right next to this, because it sort of is maybe partially mirroring that effect. The sort of stringiness here is kind of reflected there. So I actually think that that's a pretty good combination. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't stop yawning. Must be after my bedtime. But yeah, as you can see, still pretty good in this version. But again, I think that I like your distressed effect there. Alright, and now black and white image with film grain. I'm actually going to zoom in. You can't really see the film grain at that magnification. Let's see if we can't get an idea. Pretty good. Sometimes this tends to come out looking more pixelated than grainy. No, in this image, I think that it does look like film grain. Like, I think that's pretty successful, use of that effect. And in terms of does it look like an actual film image, more or less. It's tough because a true black and white printed image from film would have it tends to have a little bit more of a gamut, a little bit more of a range from the darkest darks to lightest lights. You might say more tonal range by about 2 to 3 stops on average over a digital image. So sometimes that kind of gives it away. There's a little bit of that happening here, but not so much. And then there's that same image. I think it's an improvement over the original, I would say for sure. Oh, thank you for viewing. Well, you're welcome, Becky. Thank you for being in this video. So yeah, I think overall that was some improvements there. Let's go ahead and look at Larry's work now. And okay, so we have this fella again. Now let's go ahead and zoom in just a little bit on this. I think we're getting a little bit, yeah, see here, rather than a film grain effect, it is looking a little bit more like pixelation. The difference, as far as I can see, is that when it looks pixelated, it tends to look, the individual blocks like this, you know, tend to look more square, whereas film grain ones tend to have a rounder look. Having said that, I think that this is a good image to add a sort of film grain look to, because it does sort of mirror something, sort of a look. I think the sort of the way that his face is being hit with the sun, that's the sort of thing that I associate with film images. I think you see that a lot more in older film, you know, older images shot on film, just as a stylistic thing. And so I think that that's smart, because you're sort of hearkening back to that a little bit. You know, it's a matter of the stylistic choice in this image reflecting or calling back to that. So I think that's a pretty successful one. This I actually also like. I'm not actually entirely sure. It sort of looks like the wrinkled paper thing, but it's kind of doing some interesting things here that I actually think are potentially more interesting than what this would look like with a wrinkled paper thing going here. It's almost like they're more like strips of paper, or like maybe tape. But I do like the way that looks going in there. I think that's adding a pretty interesting texture to the image that I'm enjoying a lot. Now this is close to what that would look like with the emulsion edges. I'm sorry. It's there's something a little bit like geometric looking. Like they look more like squared off. Like the ends sort of look like trimmed here, and then the insides sort of look like very squared off. Now this is pretty much what it looks like, with the exception of just that those would look a little bit more tapered, kind of, if you can imagine like a brush applying this entire image onto that white background. So you definitely are close here. And again, I would say that because it does remind me of things that we used to shoot a lot, sort of stylistic things that we used to do a lot with film, that that having this emulsion edge look actually does add something to that image. Alright, well thank you, Larry. Next up we have Betty Jo's images. And let's take a look at what you got here. Alright. Oh, so this is kind of a little bit of like a fairy tale thing going here. Oh, excuse me. So you get your film grain thing here. I like the way that this is lit quite a bit. I'm not going to, again, touch on it too much because it's kind of what the last series of video critiques were, but yeah, I like it. You definitely some shallow depth of field, and it's really pretty tight on him. You get in a little bit of blur here, which I find slightly distracting, but yeah, I like a lot of things about this image. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll zoom in here. Oops. Okay, good. So it did kind of resolve itself out. I would say that the emulsion edges don't 100% look like emulsion edges, but I do like some of the stuff that's happening here. I like some of this. I think I like this inside part right next to the edge of the actual image. Kind of this more than I necessarily like this. It's like a little bit jagged, I think. I like this image a lot, though. I think that the cyanotype is working fairly well in there. Yeah. Oh, okay, and that's the same one also with texture and. Okay. Oh, did you do? Oh, maybe I just haven't got to it yet. Okay, texture. Yeah. Sorry, kind of skimmed around here. Oops. Okay. I think this texture is a little bit distracting here. I keep finding my eyes kind of being pulled down here. And I think that's a little bit to do with focus, but I also think some of the textures, because these areas are the clearest areas, the texture seems like it's a little bit heavy here, but it doesn't seem as much. I mean, I realize it's pretty much uniform over the whole thing, but it somehow doesn't seem as distracting down here. Yes. So I would say, I think that's probably your most successful image of these four, where the elements are really kind of all working best. Alright, and then last but not least, let's take a look at Mitch's images here. Alright, now again, while this is not 100% what the emulsion edges look like, I think that these edges actually are pretty effective. Visually, I think that these are pretty cool. They're almost like, it almost kind of reminds you a little bit of more like watercolor. Like you know, had this image and somehow it was an image, a photograph made on watercolors, and these sort of, like the edges started to run or something. Yeah, I would say maybe that's somehow chemically the edges started to run. I think that's actually a really cool effect. Yeah, what am I? It looks a little bit dark here for some reason. I think maybe if it was slightly lighter, this would feel even more like it went on the image. Excuse me. But, excuse me again. Can't get over this cold. Yeah, I definitely like that effect. Now here, let's look at this film grain. This is, again, talking about that gamut and different things. I think that this sort of already looks a little bit like a film image. So if we zoom in and kind of look at the grain effect, yeah, so that really does look like grain. And actually fairly fine grain, because we really kind of had to zoom in to see it. That really does, that is one of the more convincing applications of that film grain look that I've seen. And again, applied to one of your best images from last time, I think that's really, yeah, I like that quite a bit. Alright, now I have these kind of runny edges again. And I like that look, I gotta say. Oh yeah, this is cool too. A little bit of like a crease into there. I don't see one that's more of like a texture one. This again is doing it, and I think that's really cool right there. In terms of the three that you use the edge effect on, I would say, I think maybe this one is the one where it feels like it goes the best. Especially with adding something like that in there, and just an overall lightness that feels like it works there. Yeah. So Mitch, really pretty nice. I think I would still say that this is your most successful. The film grain, add something nice to it, but I think that some of these effects have sort of enhanced what you had going on here. So nice job. So now we're at the end, and as usual, when we get to the end, I give you a word or phrase to post in response to the link that I'm going to put on here that allowed you to access this video. And in your post, you're going to write the phrase 5th of December. Right? Or was it 5th of November? Oh, I don't care. In this case, it's going to be 5th of December. Even though I'm almost positive now that Guy Fawkes Day is actually November 5th. I don't remember. Hell, I'm getting old. But anyway, put either 5th of November or 5th of December. Either one will let me know that you watched all the way to the end. So thank you guys for watching once again, and I will see you next week with some more video critiques. Until then...